Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Imam al-Anbiya wal Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, brothers and sisters in Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this, another of our sittings. As it was advertised by the admins, we shall be covering the Tafseer of Surah Al Fil. This surah is a Meccan surah. It has the characteristics of the Meccan surahs. It's a short surah. In this surah, Allah Ta'ala said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. Haven't you seen, O Muhammad, have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the owners of the elephant army which came from Yemen under the command of Abraha, intending to destroy the Kaaba in Mecca? Did he not make their plot go astray? And he sent against them birds in flocks, striking them with stones of Sijil, baked clay, and made them like an empty field of stalks of which the corn has been eaten up by cattle. And this surah has what you call Asbab Nuzul, a reason why Allah sent it down. It's a reminder of a historic event that took place, and that year is called the Year of the Elephant. The year that this incident took place is called the Year of the Elephant. The Prophet Muhammad was born the Year of the Elephant. It's the same year the Prophet Muhammad was born that this historic event took place. The story goes as follows. Mecca was the center for pilgrimage, and the Yemenis, who were Arabs, used to go to Mecca. All the Arab tribes used to go to Mecca. Abraha, who ruled Yemen, Abraha al-Ashram, he ruled Yemen on behalf of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia was a so-called superpower back then. Ethiopia was a so-called superpower back then. So Abraha was the viceroy of Ethiopia. He was a representative of Ethiopia, and he ruled Yemen on behalf of Ethiopia. He did not like to see his subjects, his citizens, go into Mecca for pilgrimage, because he was a fervent Christian. So he built a beautiful church. He built a beautiful church in Yemen, and he called it Al-Qulais. And he told the Arabs to abandon Mecca and come to the church instead, and the pilgrimage will be shifted. He'll shift the pilgrimage from Mecca to Yemen. And his motive for this is to increase the trade, because when you are a center for pilgrimage, you make a lot of money. The pilgrims need a place to stay, and they need food to eat. They need water to drink. So by you having your place as a center for pilgrimage, the pilgrimage is a money spinner. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be raking it in. So he built a beautiful church called Al-Qulais, and he told the Arabs to abandon Mecca to come to Yemen instead for their pilgrimage and come to the church. A man from Quraysh went to Yemen and saw the church, and he defecated in the church and plastered it on the walls of the church. The Quraysh used to go to Yemen in the winter time and Syria in the summertime for trading. Quraysh were merchants, and Allah spoke about their tradition of going to Yemen in the winter and Syria in the summer. So Allah said, لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشِ إِلَافِهِمْ رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. Allah spoke about the tradition of the Quraysh. They have two journeys. Rihla is a journey. One rihla in Shita, the winter, and one rihla in the summer, the Saif. The Shita, that rihla goes to Yemen. The Saif, the summer, that rihla goes to Syria. So Allah said, I made you rich from your trading trips going abroad. So show me gratitude by worshipping the Lord of this house. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Worship the Lord of this house. الذي أطعمهم من جوع, who kept them from hunger, وآمنهم من خوف, and kept them from fear. So this surah is also talking about Quraysh. The surah that we are explaining is talking about an important historic incident that took place the same year the Prophet Muhammad was born. And that incident is that Abraha built a church in Yemen called Al-Qulais and told the Arabs to abandon the Kaaba and come to Yemen for their pilgrimage, because he wanted to boost his country economically, because Hajj is a big business. If you have 500,000 people or 1,000,000 people going to your country for Hajj, and they're going to spend a week, they have to eat, they have to drink. Some of them are going to buy clothing. They need a place to stay. So the hotel business will boom. Everything will boom. This was the aim and objective of Abraha. Also, he was a fervent Christian who believes that Christianity should reign supreme over the Arabs. A man from Quraysh went to Yemen. When he saw the church, he defecated in the church. He turned it into a toilet and plastered the feces, the human waste, on the walls of the church. When Abraha found out about that, he became very, very angry. And he said he's going to take revenge by tearing down the Kaaba. So he mustered an army, a huge army with elephants. The biggest elephant was called Mahmud. And he was marching from Yemen all the way to Mecca to tear down the Kaaba, to take revenge. Some Arab tribes who found out about his intention rose up against him to fight him and stop him, but he defeated those tribes who tried to stop him. Because when you have war elephants in your army is a dangerous army. Elephants in those days were like tanks. The Persians and the Ethiopians had elephants in their armies, and these elephants were trained for war, and they crushed their opponent underneath their feet. They trample over their opponents and squash them under their feet. Many Sahabas perished under the feet of elephants at the Battle of Qadisiyah, because the Persians introduced elephants to the battlefield during the Caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab, when they were fighting to topple the Persian Empire. Many Sahabas were crushed under the feet of elephants during the Battle of Qadisiyah, until Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas sent instructions to pierce the eyes of the elephants. The only way you can defeat these people is to dig out the eyes of the elephant with your spears. And when they followed the instruction of the Amir, it turned the war around. So in those days, the more elephants you have on the battlefield, the stronger your army is. Elephants were like tanks back then. And the countries that are called the so-called superpowers, like the Persians and the Ethiopians, they used to have a lot of elephants in their armies, hundreds of elephants. And these are war elephants trained in battle to squash and crush their opponents under their feet. Hundreds of Sahabas perished at the Battle of Qadisiyah. They were crushed under the feet of elephants, the Persian elephants. Abraha captured 100 camels belonging to the grandfather of the Prophet. And this surah that was read, even though it's a short surah, you'll be surprised that it has many lessons. It has 19 lessons. The story I'm telling you about, it has 19 lessons. A short surah, but it has 19 lessons. And we are going to cover these 19 lessons one by one. The 19 lessons from the Tafseer of Surah Al Fil. So even though it's a short surah, the lessons are many. Surah 105. Before Abraha entered into Mecca to tear down the Kaaba, he called for negotiation with the grandfather of the Prophet. When the grandfather of the Prophet arrived, he held him in high esteem because he was very handsome even though he was old. He looked good for his age, and he was the leader of Quraysh. He said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want back my 100 camels." Abraha said to the grandfather of the Prophet, "When I met you, I respected you. But when you spoke, I've lost all respect for you. I am coming all the way from Yemen to tear down the Kaaba, and you did not beg me to save the Kaaba. All you care about is your 100 camels." The grandfather of the Prophet said, "I am the Lord of the camels. I am the owner of the camel. The Kaaba has a Lord who is Allah, and Allah is sufficient to protect His house. So because Allah is sufficient to protect His house, I'm not concerned about the Kaaba, I'm concerned about my camel, because the Kaaba has a Lord who is Allah, and Allah is capable of protecting His house. What a beautiful answer the Prophet's grandfather gave to Abraham. He proceeded with his plan to tear down the Kaaba. And when the big camel, not the camel, the elephant, when the big elephant saw the Kaaba, it realized what the plan was. The biggest elephant and the leader of the pack was called Mahmud. When he saw the Kaaba, he stopped and refused to go further, because the elephant is a Muslim and it is impossible for a Muslim to tear down the Kaaba. How can a Muslim tear down Allah's house? That's impossible. So the elephant refused to go further. They did everything for the elephant to go forward to tear down the Kaaba, but the elephant refused to move. While the army of Abraha was stuck in the precincts or on the outskirts of the Kaaba, looking at the Kaaba, but they can't go any further because the biggest elephant, the leader of the pack, refused to go forward to tear down the Kaaba. While they got stuck, they came to a stalemate. In that situation, Allah sent against them birds carrying rocks in their beaks and in their feet, dropping on them these rocks. But even though these rocks were small rocks in the beak of birds, when it fell on them, the rocks became heavy like 1-ton rocks. So they became squashed up like vegetables. Have you ever seen when something is blended in the blender, how it is squashed up? That's how they became. That's why Allah said Ma'kul. Ma'kul means eaten. The way the cow would chew the grass. Do you see how the cow chew the grass? How it is squashed up. When the birds pelted them with these rocks, their bodies became like Ma'kul, like grass which was eaten by a cow. So Allah said, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil wa arsala عليهم تارا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. Didn't you see how your Lord, Surah 105, didn't you see how your Lord dealt with the owners of the elephant? Field, the owners of the field. Didn't He cause their plot to go astray? And He sent against them a swarm of birds, tarmihim, pelting them with rocks, with clays that they carry in their beaks. And these rocks were so heavy, when it fell on them, it's like a 1-ton rock dropping on them. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَيَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. And their bodies were squashed to such an extent, Allah said they were like ma'kul, the way the cow eat the grass and chew the grass and squash the grass. This is what came of them. I told you that this story has 19 lessons. So the person taking notes, the 19 lessons from the story of Surah Al Fil. The 19 lessons from the Tafseer of Surah Al Fil. And all these surahs, whether Surah Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab, Surah Masad, it has many lessons as well. One of the lessons from Surah Masad is that sometimes your own family become your own enemy. The uncle of the Prophet was his greatest enemy. Surah Masad is the evidence. All these surahs, they have a lot of lessons. The story of Adam and the Satan in the garden has over 100 lessons. You just have to read Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya of Ibn Kathir to pick out these lessons. The very first lesson from the Tafsir of Surah Al Fil is that whenever a person colonizes you, he wants you to imitate him. If the French colonize you, you have to speak French. If the British colonize you, you have to speak English. If the Dutch colonize you, you have to speak Dutch. If the Portuguese colonize you, you have to speak Portuguese. I've just finished touring 12 African countries. I was in a country called Mozambique. In Mozambique, everybody speaks Portuguese. I was shocked. I saw black people speaking Portuguese, a European language. And when I turn on the TV, everything is in Portuguese. A country in Africa speaking Portuguese. In Angola, the same thing, they speak Portuguese. In Guinea-Bissau, Equatorial Guinea, they speak Portuguese. Whenever the colonial powers colonize you, you have to follow their culture. You have to follow their religion. You have to speak their language. In Mali, they speak French. In Niger, they speak French. In Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, they speak French. Mauritania, And the French made it illegal to speak Arabic until the French were fought and defeated and kicked out of Algeria. Then the Algerians brought teachers from Palestine, from Jordan, from Egypt to come to Algeria to teach the people Arabic. Now, when I speak to an Algerian online, on the internet, their Arabic is perfect. That wasn't the case in the 1960s. Back then in the 1960s, the French made it illegal to speak Arabic. You could go to prison if they catch you speaking Arabic. You have to speak French. So whenever the colonial masters colonize you, they want you to follow them because the ultimate flattery is to imitate a person. Imitation is the ultimate flattery. The French are in Mali to uproot the Islamic Sharia because they colonized Mali back in the 1950s and the 1960s. How dare you deviate from the French culture and implement Sharia? We're going to invade you and kill you for Sharia. You can't implement what we don't agree for you to implement. So even though they claim they gave independence to Mali, they still say we dictate to you what we want you to do in Mali. The colonial masters, they want you to follow their religion, to follow their culture, their ethos, their ethics, their morals, and to speak their language. Because when you speak their language, you become a shaitan like them. Whenever the white man wants you to think like him, the first thing he does is to shove his language down your throat. To shove his language down your throat. Because then you'll have his mentality. You'll be a shaitan like him. You'll be exactly like him. Abraham was no different. He was a Christian. He said, why the Arabs are going to the Kaaba? So he built a big church in Yemen called Al Fil and told the Arabs to abandon the Kaaba and come to Christianity. Give up what Abraham built for you, the Kaaba. I know it was built by Abraham, but abandon the Kaaba. Come to church. It's better for you. He was the colonial master. Abraham, who ruled Yemen on behalf of Ethiopia. He was a viceroy for Ethiopia. A man from Quraysh went to Yemen and saw the church, so he defecated in the church and plastered it all over the walls of the church. How dare you tell us to abandon the Kaaba? It was built by Abraham. You, Abraham, how can you compare yourself to Abraham? Abraham was a prophet. You are nobody. You're a kafir, nobody. How can we abandon the Kaaba, which was built by Abraham, for your church, Al Fil? Abraham was no different. He was a Christian, and he was a colonial master. And he believes everybody should be Christian like him. Because when a person colonizes you, he wants you to copy him, to follow him. Because imitation is the ultimate flattery. And he was a colonial master and believed they had to be Christians like him, yes. The British, they have the same mentality, and the French and the Portuguese and the Dutch and the Spanish. The 5 countries that colonize the world, who are they? The 5 countries that colonize the world, who are they? And why did they have so much power? They had the power because they had the gunpowder. They used the gunpowder to make the gun. The gun gave them the power. The British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Portuguese, they carved up the world between themselves. These 5 powers, they carved up the world between themselves. In South Africa, everybody, not South Africa, South America. In South America, everybody speaks Spanish, except for Brazil. Brazil speaks Portuguese. Every other country speaks Spanish. In Africa, they either speak English, French, or Portuguese. There is a language called Afrikaans, which the white man in South Africa made up. Have you heard about that language, Afrikaans? They speak it in South Africa. A lot of the words is Dutch. So if you can speak Afrikaans, you can speak Dutch. It's coming from Dutch, that language. Did you know that in the 1980s, the white man opened fire and killed black kids because they refused to speak Afrikaans? Did you know that? The white man in South Africa opened fire on black kids, children, because they refused to learn Afrikaans, his language. Whenever a person colonizes you, he wants you to speak his language. He wants you to follow his religion. He wants you to have his culture, his morals, his ethics, his ethos, and his ideology. He wants you to copy him to the letter. And when you don't copy him, the devil, he becomes angry and he wants to kill you. If you don't copy him, he becomes angry and he wants to kill you. In the 1980s, the white man opened fire and killed children, school children who refused to learn Afrikaans in South Africa. You need to go and read the history. The very first lesson you learn from this Surah Al Fil is that whenever a person colonizes you, he wants you to copy him, emulate him, follow him, because imitation is the ultimate flattery. The second lesson you learn is the power of dua. Which dua? The dua of Abraham. Baqarah 126. Do you remember the dua of Abraham? Baqarah 126. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ هذا بلدا آمنا وارزق أهله من الثمرات من آمن منهم بالله واليوم الآخر. And remember when Abraham said, my Lord, make the city of Mecca a place of security and provide its people with fruits. So Abraham begged Allah to make Mecca safe. So if Allah Ta'ala was evoked by Abraham, Allah was evoked by Abraham. Abraham said, oh Allah, make this city safe. How can Abraham destroy the Kaaba? Allah answered the dua of Abraham to make Mecca safe. And it is haram to kill people in Mecca. It is haram to cut down the trees of Mecca. It is haram to start wars in Mecca, to fight wars in Mecca. Because Abraham made a dua for Allah to make Mecca safe. The power of dua. The third lesson, kuffar are jealous of the Hajj. The third lesson you learn, the kuffar are jealous about the Hajj. And they always wish that a disaster takes place during the Hajj. Abraha was jealous about the Hajj. That's why he built Al-Qulais and told the Arabs to abandon the Kaaba and come to Yemen and visit the church. Give up the Kaaba. The church is better. The other lesson, the fourth lesson, when you insult the religion of a people, they are going to insult your religion. If you insult the religion of a people, they take revenge by insulting your religion. Surah 6, 108. Why the same person who is taking notes bringing the Hujjah. Surah 6, 108. And insult not those who they disbelieve, worship beside Allah, lest they insult Allah wrongfully without knowledge. Thus we have made fear seeming to each people its own doings. Then to their Lord is their return, and He shall then inform them of what they used to do. If you insult somebody's religion, they're going to insult your religion. It's called to take revenge. So when the man went to Yemen and defecated in the church, a man from Quraysh, and plastered the human waste on the walls of the church, the first thing came to the mind of Abraha was to take revenge. So he came with elephants to tear down the Kaaba. It's called revenge. Therefore, you have to be careful what you say about the religion of others, because Allah said if you insult their gods, they're going to insult Allah. If you insult their church, they insult the masjid. If you insult their Bible, they insult the Quran. It's called to take revenge. And for every action, there is a reaction. So when the man of Quraysh defecated in the church, Abraha came with elephants to tear the Kaaba down. The Arabs tried to stop him. They failed because his army was strong and formidable. Allah had to intervene Himself to stop the destruction of the Kaaba. So Allah said, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. The fifth lesson you learn from the tafsir is that Allah's armies are numerous and various, because Allah used birds as His army against Abraham. So the fifth lesson, the armies of Allah are numerous. As I told you, we have over 19 lessons from the story of Surah Al Fil. We have over 19 lessons, and we're going to pick out the lessons one by one. Surah 48 verse 7. وَلِلَّهِ جُنُودُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. And to Allah belong the soldiers of the heavens and the earth, and ever is Allah exalted in might and wise. Might and He is wise. Look what Allah used against Abraham. Birds. طَارًا أَبَابِيلَ تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ. A mighty army. No man could stop him. He destroyed all the armies that tried to stop him from tearing down the Kaaba. Yet Allah sent against him birds, carrying stones in their beaks, pelting him. تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ. Birds came from hell, pelting him with stones until he became squashed up, like when the animal chew the food, the grass. Allah said, ma'kul, like when the cow chew the grass. So Allah's armies are numerous and various. Surah 74 verse 31. Surah 74 verse 31. And none can know the host of your Lord but He. You can't tell what Allah's army is going to be. You don't even know their numbers. You don't know how many angels Allah has. That's one of His armies, the angels. You don't know how many birds He has. One of Allah's army is the killer bees. Haven't you seen killer bees killing people? That's Allah's army, the bees. The wasp is Allah's army. The angels are Allah's army. The locust is Allah's army. Haven't you seen the locust turn big, vast of land, acres of land into desert? So in Surah 74 verse 31, Allah told you, وَمَا يَعْلَمْ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا ذِكْرَى لِلْبَشَرِ. No one knows Allah's army except Him. You don't know what Allah is going to use against you as His army. It is unexpected. You can't predict it. It's unexpected. Abraham didn't know birds were going to come and pelt him with stones. It's unexpected. You don't know what army Allah will unleash against you at what time. That is the lesson you learn from this surah. The sixth lesson. The kuffar will tear down the masajid of Allah if they get the opportunity. The kuffar will demolish the masajid of Allah if they get the opportunity to do so. Did the Prophet tell you in a hadith that a man from Ethiopia will come to tear down the Kaaba? It's one of the signs of the last days. So the only people who love the masajid of Allah are the sincere believers. Surah 9 verse 17. Surah 9 verse 17 to 18. Allah told you in Surah 9, Surah October verse 17 to 18. It's the believers who will protect Allah's house, not the kuffar. Allah said it's the believers who will protect Allah's house, not the kuffar. مَا كَانَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ أَن يَعْمُرُوا مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ شَاهِدِينَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ بِالْكُفْرِ. It's not for the kuffar, the mushrikeen, to look after Allah's house. Allah said what? They make takfir on themselves by not going to the masjid and not looking after the masjid and not refurbishing the masjid. They make takfir on themselves because they don't go to the masjid and they don't care about the masjid. They don't give a damn about the masjid. Shahideen ala anfusihim bil kufr. Abraham came to tear down the holiest masjid because he was a kafir. And kafirs will always tear down Allah's house. Where is the ayah? Tawbah 17 to 18. Why is it taking so long for the ayah to come? Where is the ayah? Surah Tawbah 17 to 18. Allah told you in this ayah, the kuffar will never look after Allah's house. مَا كَانَ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ أَن يَعْمُرُوا مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ شَاهِدِينَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ بِالْكُفْرِ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ وَفِي النَّارِ هُمْ خَالِدُونَ. It is not for the idolaters to tend to Allah's sanctuaries. The tafsir, they will not look after Allah's house. And they won't pray in them. That's the tafsir. Bearing witness against themselves of disbelief. Allah said, they make takfir on themselves. Shahideen ala anfusim bil kufr. As for such, their works are in vain, and the fire will be their abode. He only shall tend Allah's sanctuaries who believe in Allah and the last day and observe proper worship. So Allah said, the believers, they are the ones who look after Allah's house. The kuffar, the munafiqun, they want to tear it down. And they hate to hear the adhan. They hate to hear the adhan. Another ayah, Surah 22 verse 40. Allah speaks about tearing down Allah's house. Yet another ayah, Surah 22 verse 40. Allah speaks about those who want to tear down Allah's house. So what did Allah say? وَلَوْلَا دَفْءُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْدَهُمْ بِبَعْدٍ لَهُدِمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِعٌ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدُ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. For had it not that Allah repels one set of people by means of another, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masajid, wherein the name of Allah is mentioned, much would surely have been pulled down. They would be razed to the ground. They would have been what? Razed to the ground. If Allah did not repel one set of people with another set of people. We have 20 lessons from the story of this that I've just told you. The seventh lesson is, in times of difficulty, pagans turn to Allah in dua. You found the hadith at the time the hour will be closed. Abdullah ibn Amr, I heard the Prophet said, Zul Suwayqatain, the man with the two thin legs from Abyssinia, will destroy the Kaaba and steal its treasure, the Kiswa. It is as if I could see him now. He is bald-headed and has a distortion in his wrist. He will strike the Kaaba with his spade, pickaxe. So do you follow? Do you see the hadith? The Kafirs will tear down the Kaaba in the last days. We have over 19 lessons to be learned from the story of Surah Al Fil. The 7th lesson, Kuffar turned to Allah in times of difficulties. The Prophet's grandfather was a pagan, but he prayed to Allah. He didn't pray to Lat, Uzza, Hubal, Manat and beg them to save the Kaaba. How can a wooden stone save the Kaaba? He prayed to Allah. So the 7th lesson, in times of to Allah. There's an ayah that spoke about this, that the Kuffar turned to Allah in times of need. They didn't turn to the wooden stones that they worship. And this is Surah Ankabut, Surah 29, verse 65. Allah said some kuffar were in the boat, and the boat was about to capsize. And they turned to Allah, raised their hands, mukhlisin al-huddin, then they were sincere. In other words, when they turned to Allah, they singled out Allah for ibadah. They didn't call upon Lat, Uzza, Hubal, Manat. Promise Allah, we will worship you alone. If you save us from drowning, we will worship you alone. Allah said, فَلَمَّا نَجَّهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. I answered their dua and I saved them from drowning. But when they went back to dry land, when they touched down, they broke their promise. They broke their promise and they worshipped wooden stones beside Allah. Surah Ankabut, verse 65. A very famous incident. So Allah will answer the dua of a kafir if he call upon Allah alone in the dua. The 8th lesson, Allah will answer the dua of a kafir if he call upon Allah alone during the dua, and he recognized that only Allah can help him. Lesson number 8, Allah will answer. Where is the ayah? Surah 29, verse 65. فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. Ankabut 65, Surah 29, verse 65. They, the pagans, were in the boat, and the boat was about to capsize. And they raised their hands and prayed to me, Allah alone. They promised me they will worship me alone. I kept my side of the bargain. I answered their dua and I saved them from the calamity. But they broke their promise. They tried to pull a stunt. When I was in South Africa and I told the story, the Muslims in the masjid said, so Sheikh Fasa, why did Allah answer their dua? If Allah knew that they were trying to pull a stunt, don't you know the reason why? Allah will use this as an argument against them on Judgment Day. The Kiram and Katibin recorded the incident, and they did not use a camera called or Toshiba to record what took place. The Kiram and Katibin recorded the incident. It will be played back to them on Judgment Day. Do you remember when you were in the boat and you were going to drown? You were on the verge of drowning, and you promised Allah in a dua that you worship Allah, and Allah saved you, and you broke your promise. When you went back to dry land, you worshiped wooden stones. It will be played back to them, and then they'll be found guilty as charged and dumped into the hellfire to abide forever. You will see your deeds on Judgment Day. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. You shall see your deeds on Judgment Day. Even an atom's weight of evil, you shall see it, and atom's weight of good, you shall see it. Because Judgment Day is Yawmul Hisab, the day of reckoning. The Kiram and Katibin recorded the incident, and they did not use Sony camera or Toshiba or Samsung to record it. They didn't use a cell phone to record the incident. Samsung Galaxy, that's the cell phone everybody in the world is going crazy for. Samsung Galaxy. They did not use that to record the incident, but they recorded the incident, and it shall be played back to you on Judgment Day, because Allah said, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. The 8th lesson you learn, the 8th lesson is that Allah will answer the dua of a kafir. Allah answered the dua of a kafir because Allah answered the dua of the Prophet's grandfather and saved the Kaaba. Don't forget to write the 8th lesson you learn. Allah will answer the dua of a kafir if he called upon Allah alone during the dua. Allah will answer the dua of a kafir if he make his sincerity to Allah, to him. If he calls upon Allah alone during the dua, then the dua is answered. Okay, yes. And the Hujjah is Surah Ankabut, Surah 29, verse 65. Allah did answer the dua of the kuffar. Anyway, we continue with the dars. I told you I have over 20 lessons to be learned from this story. Lesson number 9, always use historical facts when giving the dawah. Allah was giving the dawah to the kuffar in Mecca. So what did Allah say? Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Didn't you see how it dealt with the owners of the elephant? Always use historical facts when giving the dawah. It's called hikmah, wisdom. So when you are giving dawah to a homosexual, always remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And when you are giving dawah to those who dabble in black magic, always remember the story of Musa and the Pharaoh in Egypt. And when you are giving dawah to the con artists, those who cheat with the scales, who rip off people money, always remember the story of Prophet Saleh, because they used to cheat with the scales. And the people of Shu'aib as well, they cheat with the scales. Always use historical facts when giving the dawah. It is called hikmah. And Allah said, "Ud'u ila sabil rabbik bil hikmah," call to the way of your Lord with hikmah. Historical facts boost the dawah. It gives credibility to your dawah. And Allah said, call to the way of your Lord with hikmah. Ud'u ila sabil rabbik bil hikmah. Surah 16. Ud'u ila sabil rabbik bil hikmah wal maw'idat al hasan. And beautiful preaching. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. And reason with them in the best of ways. Surah 16, 125. Surah 16, 125. Call to the way of your Lord with hikmah. One of the best ways to give the dawah is to use historical facts. This incident was fresh in the minds of the Arabs. The story of the elephant. It took place the year the Prophet Muhammad was born. The Prophet was born the year of the elephant. It was fresh in the minds of the Arabs. This is why Allah bring it up. It's called hikmah in giving the dawah. And you should always give the dawah with hikmah, like Allah told you in Surah 16, 125. The 10th lesson you learn from the story, animals can be used for war. That is the 10th lesson from the story. Animals can be used for war. I told you the armies of the Ethiopians and the Persians, they had elephants. Back then, elephants were like tanks. When Omar was conquering Persia, hundreds of Sahabas perished underneath the feet of elephants in the Battle of Qadisiyah. Today, horses are used on the battlefield. Dogs are used on the battlefield. The Americans passed a law. Our soldiers can have sex with the animals they take to war. It's called bestiality in the American army. Our soldiers can have sex with the dogs they take to the battlefield. That's the new law in America now. Animals can be used for war. The bird, the dove, is used to carry messages. The dolphin is used to search the ocean floor, looking for land, for sea mines, bombs that they plant under the sea that can use to destroy submarines. Dolphins are used to search the ocean floor for mines. So this is the 10th lesson you learn from the Tafseer of Surah Al Fil. Animals can be used for war. Camels were used for war. Horses were used for war. The most effective animal on the battlefield is the horse, and because of that, Allah said what? وَالْعَادِيَاتِ دَبْحًا فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا. I swear by the horses, the steeds of war that run and they pant with their breath. And when their hooves hit against the rock, they leave sparks of fire. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. And they even go and attack the enemy at subh, at fajr time. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَكَعًا. These horses, when they run along the path, they are so swift, they leave behind a cloud of dust. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. These horses are so brave, they strike at the middle of the enemy. Wasat. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. Allah swears by horses that are used for war in Surah وَالْعَادِيَاتِ دَبْحًا, Surah 100. Because animals can be used on the battlefield. And the Prophet said in a hadith, Allah puts barakah in the forelocks of horses that are used for jihad until the day of judgment. This hadith is in Bukhari. Allah puts barakah in the forelocks of horses that are used for jihad from now until the day of judgment. This hadith is in Bukhari. It is in the Muwatta of Imam Malik as well. That is the 10th lesson you learn from this surah tonight. Tonight, that is in Australia. It's night in Australia. But here in Jamaica, it's day. It's 9 o'clock here in Jamaica in the morning. And it's 9 o'clock in Australia. Well, it's 10 o'clock in Australia. So what is the other lesson that we learn from this tafsir? What is lesson number 11? Anyone who plots against Allah's house, anyone who plots against Allah's deen or Allah's house will be destroyed. If you try to bring harm to Mecca, you'll be destroyed, like Abraham. That's the 11th lesson. The 11th lesson, anyone who plots against Allah's house, anyone who tries to bring harm to Mecca shall be destroyed the way Abraham was destroyed. Allah made an example out of him by trying to bring harm to Mecca. If you try to bring harm to Allah's house, you should be destroyed. Number 12, bullies will always flex their muscles. There's an ayah in the Quran where Allah told you the bully will always flex his muscles. Abraham was a bully. He built a church and told the Arabs to abandon the Kaaba. The church is called Al-Qulais. There's an ayah where Allah told that the bully will always flex his muscles. Baqarah 251. وَلَوْلَا يَدَفْعُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بَعْضًا بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضُ. Baqarah 251. It's a long ayah. I only want a piece of the ayah that I quoted. Qanun ad-dafa'. Allah said, if we did not repel one set of people with another, the world would be full of mischief and destruction. Baqarah 251. If we did not repel one set of people with another, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضُ. The world would have been destroyed if we did not repel one set of people with another set of people. Why? Because a bully will always flex his muscles. Look how the Americans are behaving. They want to invade every country in the world and kill the people and steal their oil. Even Hugo Chavez of Venezuela is scared. The Americans are going to come for his oil as well in Venezuela. He bought a lot of weapons from Russia to protect himself. Bullies will always flex their muscles. But a bully will always be destroyed because the bully spreads himself thin. And the country that you think is the poorest country will destroy the richest country. Afghanistan, the poorest country, is now being used to destroy the richest country. What an irony. The poorest country is destroying the richest country on the battlefield. So this ayah tells you that the bully will always flex his muscles. And Abraham was a bully, therefore he behaved like a bully. He plots and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. The 13th lesson you learn is that you should always have weapons to protect yourself. Because the Arabs couldn't stop Abraham. Their army was weak. Allah told you in the Quran, you should always have weapons to protect yourself. That is the 13th lesson. The Arabs could not stop Abraham. Their army was weak, inferior to Abraham. You have to be prepared. Because one of the laws of nature says, he who fails to prepare has got to be prepared to fail. That is one of the laws of nature. And we covered the laws of nature in this room. But many of you were not here. I don't know why you were not here, but you were not here. The 13th lesson, you should always have weapons to protect yourself. Because you were commanded by Allah to have weapons to protect yourself. Surah 8 verse 60. وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ وَمِن رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ. And make ready against them all you can with power, including steeds of war, tanks, planes, missiles, artillery, to strike terror in the hearts of my enemies and your enemies. Allah told you in Surah 60 verse 8, Surah 8 verse 60, Anfal 60, always have weapons to protect yourself. Where is the ayah I quoted? Surah 8 verse 60. The next lesson we learn is why the person who is taking the notes has to bring the hujjah. What is going on in my room? The other people are a waste of space. Why the same person taking notes have to bring the hujjah? The other lesson we learn is the bravery of the Arabs. Even though Abraham was considered a so-called superpower, they tried to fight him. They were defeated, but at least they tried. They will be remembered in history. At least they tried. We have over 26 people in the room. Have you forgotten? We have 26 people in the room. Why the person who is doing notes have to bring the hujjah? The other lesson, the bravery of the Arabs, they tried to stop Abraham. That's the other lesson. And that is lesson number 14. The other lesson is the Arabs take pride in the Kaaba. The bravery of the Arabs, they tried to stop Abraham. Okay, yes. The other lesson, the Arabs take pride in the Kaaba because it was the first house built to worship Allah, like Allah told you in Surah 3 verse 96. The Arabs take pride in the Kaaba. Bring the ayah, Surah 3 verse 96. Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nas lalladhi bi Bakkah mubarakan wa hudan lil alamin. Verily, the first house built to worship Allah alone is that house which is built in the Kaaba, in Mecca. That house which is built in Mecca. It's the first house built to worship Allah alone. The Arabs take pride in the Kaaba. This is why They refused to abandon the Kaaba to go to Yemen for their pilgrimage and to visit the church and abandon the Kaaba. They can't give up the Kaaba for the church. That's why the Arab went to Yemen and defecated in the church and plastered it on the walls of the church. The 16th lesson, Hajj is a huge money spinner. That's why Abraham wanted to redirect the Hajj to Yemen to boost his economy. The 16th lesson is Hajj is a big money spinner. If Hajj is in your country, you're raking it in. Some of the richest people in Saudi Arabia that I saw when I was living there were right there in Mecca. Some of the richest Saudis are from Mecca because Hajj is a money spinner. That's why Abraham wanted Hajj to be taken to Yemen, not to Mecca, to boost the Yemeni economy. The other lesson, when you look good for your age, you gain respect. When you grow old gracefully, you gain respect. Why he respected the Prophet's grandfather when he met him? Because he grew old gracefully. When you grow old gracefully, you gain respect. That's the 17th lesson. Abraham respected the Prophet's grandfather when he met him. When you grow old gracefully, you gain respect. Some people do not grow old gracefully. When they are 50, they look 60. Because of their sins, the aging process is accelerated. That's the 17th lesson. When you grow old gracefully, you gain respect. Number 18. The kuffar put their tawakkul in their weaponry and their army. And they forgot that these things can be sabotaged. The kuffar, they put their tawakkul in their weaponry and their army. Like Abraham. He was 100% sure no one can stop him from tearing down the Kaaba. He was confident. No one on the face of the earth can stop him from tearing down the Kaaba. Kafirs put their tawakkul in their army and their weaponry. And they forget that Allah Ta'ala is the best of planners. They keep forgetting Allah is the best of planners because they don't believe in Allah. The Americans, they did that when they invaded Afghanistan. They put their tawakkul in their army and their weaponry. And they keep forgetting Allah is the best of planners. Their army and their weaponry. Don't forget the word weaponry. They put their tawakkul in their army and their weaponry. And they brag and boast, we have the best weapons in the world. We can invade and conquer any country in the world. And they keep forgetting Allah is the best of planners. Abraham, that was his problem. He put his tawakkul in his army and his weaponry, and he was convinced no one can stop him from demolishing the Kaaba. And he forgot Allah is the best of planners. Allah said, you plot, but Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. The other lesson, all animals are Muslims. Because the big elephant Mahmud, when he saw what the plan was, he refused to go forward to tear down the Kaaba. All animals are Muslims. That is the 19th lesson. Some people come late for the tafsir, I don't know why. The 19th lesson from this tafsir, all animals are Muslims, because the big elephant Mahmud, when he saw what the plan was to demolish the Kaaba, he refused to budge. They did everything for him to budge and he refused. How can a Muslim tear down the Kaaba? Impossible. All animals are Muslims, and because of that, when the bird went to Yemen and saw Bilqis and her people worshipping the sun instead of Allah, he came back to Sulaiman and complained about what he saw in Yemen. So in Surah 27 verse 24, what the bird said, وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا يَسْجُدُونَ لِلشَّمْسِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَزَيْدَهُمْ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Surah 27 verse 24. I found her and her people worshipping the sun instead of Allah, and the shaitan has made their evil deeds fair seeming to them and has barred them from the way of Allah, so they have no guidance. The bird complained to Sulaiman. Why? Okay, bring the ayah after. Why you took so long to bring the point? All animals are Muslims. Bring the ayah after the point. Bring the ayah again, Muslim 245. I want the ayah to come after the point. Why the bird complained to Sulaiman? Because the animals are Muslims. Surah 61. سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything in the heavens and everything on the earth worships Allah. سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Surah 61, the very first ayah. All the animals are Muslims. Qurtubi in his tafsir said, when you see the birds flapping their wing, the birds are making salah. Qurtubi in his tafsir of this ayah, he said, when the birds flap their wings and they sing, the birds are making salah. And when the rooster crows in the morning and wakes you up for Fajr, the rooster sees an angel. And the rooster crows at Asr time as well. I would never kill a rooster that wakes me for Fajr and eat that rooster. I can't. The other lesson you learn, lesson number 20, Allah is the best of the kuffar plans and Allah is the best of planners. Lesson number 20, the kuffar plot and Allah plans and Allah is the best of planners. Lesson number 20, the kuffar plot and Allah plans and Allah is the best of planners. Yes, that's the evidence. Surah 3 verse 54, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرُوا اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. Lesson 20, some kuffar use structures to impress onlookers. Structures, buildings, infrastructure or structures are used to impress others. Why did he build Al-Qulais? To impress the Arabs, the big church, to impress. Structures and infrastructures are used to impress others. Heard about Hagia Sophia? Have heard about that church, Hagia Sophia, the biggest church in the world, is in Istanbul. It was built by Constantinople, Emperor Constantine, to impress. The biggest church, Hagia Sophia. Then the Muslims conquered Turkey and turned it into a masjid. Structures and infrastructure to impress others. That was the plan of Abraham. That's why he built Al-Qulais. That's why he built Al-Qulais, to impress others. The Empire State Building. Have you heard about the Empire State Building? Have you heard about the tallest building in the world, built to impress others? Where is that building? Where is that building? Do you know that building? It is in Dubai. And the Rasul said, يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. One of the signs of the last days is that the barefooted herdsmen will become rich and they will compete in building tall buildings. يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. A famous hadith, Hadith Jibril. When Jibril came and rested his knees against the knees of the Prophet in Medina, and said, what are the signs before Judgment Day? The Rasul said, Antal al-Ama Rabbataha. A woman will give birth to her mistress, her master. And the Arabs will become rich overnight in building tall buildings. Structures and infrastructure are being used, past and present, to impress others. And then the Saudis made a public announcement, we are going to build the tallest building in the world in Jeddah. You can stand on top of it and see Egypt. We are going to have a restaurant on top of it. While you are in your restaurant dining on top of that building, you can see Egypt. And it is called the Kingdom Towers. It will be built in Jeddah. The Kingdom Towers. You can stay on top of it, having your meal, and look at Egypt. The Rasul said the Arabs will compete with each other in building the tallest buildings. So Abraham had the same mentality. He built Al-Qulais to impress others. So he told the Arabs, abandon the Kaaba and come to my church. Abandon the Kaaba and come to my church. Al-Qulais. Look how impressive my church is. The last lesson, some kuffar have tawakkul. The Prophet's grandfather put his tawakkul in a law. What did he say? I ask you to release my camels, my 100 camels, because my camels belong to me. I didn't ask you to save the Kaaba because the Kaaba has a Lord who will protect it. The Lord of the Kaaba is Allah, and Allah is sufficient to protect his house. Look at his tawakkul. So the last lesson you learn today is some kuffar, they have tawakkul. Today's topic, the 21 lessons from the Tafseer of Surah Al Fil. And please save it and post it on Facebook ASAP. I'll take 3 questions. I'm sorry, there are no questions today. Please save the topic and post it on Facebook, the 21 lessons from the story of Surah Al Fil. The 21 lessons from the Tafsir of Surah Al Fil. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. I hope you come to the room early. Many of you come very, very late. You should come here 1 p.m. UK time or 8 a.m. USA time. Some of you come very late. So you miss a lot of things that were covered. Tomorrow is the Tafsir of Surah Kawthar, and the poster is now being made. And when you come to the room, don't be lazy. You have one person taking the notes and bringing the hujjah, and everybody else is lazy. You are not allowed to be a waste of space. You should be active in the dawah and don't be a waste of space. What is the question? I'll take one question. If all animals are Muslim, then it's not permissible to give them haram food as well. Is that correct? And what's the reason for that? I don't know any fatwa that says you cannot give animals haram food, because the rules of halal and haram it doesn't cover animals. I don't know any fatwa, anyone who passed such a fatwa. The rules of halal and haram, it doesn't cover animals. Animals can have sex with their daughters and their mothers. Didn't you know that? Animals have sex with their daughters and their mothers, dogs especially. So the rules of halal and haram, it doesn't cover animals. Animals are allowed to expose their aura, their private parts. They don't have to wear clothes. We can't expose our private parts. So we cannot take the rules of halal and haram to cover animals, because animals are allowed incest. The dogs impregnate their own mothers and daughters. I don't think there are any more questions. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.